You're about to see what I have found is the #1 cause of divorce. You're about to see what destroys more relationships than anything I know. You're about to see what takes a lot of your energy, causes a lot of your conflicts. A lot of the negative things that happen to us are a direct result of having too much anger buried deep inside. I want you to be able to spot it. I want to give you some ways to get it out of you so you can enjoy the kind of relationship you really want. This is an exciting session. I know you're going to be helped. Thank you. Okay. Thank you. All right. Thank you very much. We've got a couple of sessions in a row here that I am very excited about sharing because these have been also, as others have that I've mentioned, very, very life-changing for me. And effective in me understanding other people as well as keeping us in harmony. I am convinced that this session further explains the #1 cause of divorce. It's also what I believe is the #1 cause of unhappiness in marriages. It's what separates our relationship. It is a very serious problem, and we're all involved in it, and I want to really elaborate and explain why it causes so much damage, so that we can walk out of here saying to ourselves, no way do I want that. In fact, I'd be excited if I knew that you were running enthusiastically towards the concept of forgiveness, because it comes out of the word anger, which is what this session is about. And it can happen anytime. Years ago now, when Michael was much younger, he said, Dad, wouldn't it be great to have a rope up on this tree, hanging on that limb? We could swing from this bank out over the water and crash into the water. And I love ropes over lakes. That's one of my favorite things. I said, great idea. Let's get a rope. So we get 4 ropes, 4 ski ropes, nylon ropes. We think this is going to be great. And so we're thinking, how are we going to get that up? There's about 30 feet up there, okay? And so he's about 12. Greg would have been about 15 or so. And Greg was just starting football, starting to weight lift and so on. And I said, Greg, you could do this. No, not me, Dad. Look at that thing. I'm not going up there. Mike says, come on, Greg. You know, you can do it. Look at your muscles. You know, come on. Look at, there's this vine. You know, there's vines that grow in this part. Big, thick vine that grew from the ground all the way up into that tree. It was one of those kind of like a Tarzan kind of vine. And I could see it was well secured all up into the tree. So I said, just climb up this vine. Just play like it's football rope practice. Come on. He said, Dad, no, I don't want to do that. That's serious. Look at that. What if this thing didn't hold? I said, Greg, trust me. And he did it. It always amazes me that he does these kind of things. I went up that thing, and then the story gets more interesting. I threw a saw up to him, 30 feet in the air. A couple of tries, and he caught it. Okay, I said, cut the vine off, because the vine would be in our way of swinging. So he says, all right, but now how am I going to get down? And I said, the way you get down is, I said, now pay attention, because this is real important. The way you get down is we'll tie the rope on to this chain, okay? And I'll give you these gloves, I'll throw them up to you, and you wrap your leg around the rope, 4 ropes, Greg. Grab on with the gloves and just slide down, breathe. You sure? Yes. I mean, am I not your father? Trust me. Did I want to injure you? No. Mike says, you can do it, Greg. And so he's a cheerleader, so Greg climbs up this vine. He did it. He gets about 30 feet in the air. He's really nervous. He's crawling out over it. He puts this chain around the limb, big limb, about that thick, and then puts a lock on it so it would stay up there. And then he ties the ropes together and onto that chain, and it falls down, okay? Now the vine is gone now, so he says, now tell me again. Now just put your legs around, grab the chain, hold on. You know how strong you are. Grab the rope, slide down, no problem. Yeah, Greg, you can do it. Don't be a wimp on us, Greg. Okay, he said, okay, I'll do it. So he crawls down. He's hanging on by the chain, you know. He's got the rope with his other hand. He says, Dad, I don't think this is going to work. He says, Dad, I'm getting really nervous. I'm getting afraid. Dad, what do I do? I said, just let go of that chain. Grab the rope. I'm telling you, hold it tight, though, so when you come down, you go slow. Grab it tight. I said, he said, I'm losing my strength, Dad. What do I do? He's really getting angry. Dad, I can't believe you talked me into this. I said, do it. Hurry up. You're going to get hurt. He says, oh. He grabs the rope. Crashes against the ground. Very angry. Has some very choice words for me and Mike. Offends Mike instantly. So Mike runs up in the house crying, you know, and I'm trying to comfort him. Don't touch me, Dad. Okay? That's anger. I'm never going to believe you again. And you try to do things like this, and he's done many others since then. Okay? Now that's anger. Do you know that anger is okay? It's a healthy emotion. I've asked throughout these sessions, how many of you have been angry at least once the last month? Let me see your hands again. At least once. See this? Everybody gets angry. It's okay to get angry. I give you permission to get angry. It is a healthy emotion to get angry. It leads us, it motivates us to do good things. It causes us to change. But there is a major problem with anger, as illustrated with what happened to me several years ago. I'm at a hotel. Good friend of mine, had been for years, says to me, I got to talk to you. We got to talk. I said, oh yeah? About what? He says, I've been upset with you for about 9 years now. I've been angry with you for about 9 years, and I cannot shake it. I've tried to. I can remember him saying, I figured, oh, I'll get over it. Time, you know. I'm a big boy, you know. This will just drop away. But it hasn't dropped away. It's affecting me. It's affecting some of the things I do in my job, other relationships. It's bothering me. I don't like it anymore. I have got to get this thing solved. Can we meet about it? Well, you know, whenever a good friend says something like this to you, it makes you sick to your stomach, and essentially you go, oh, wow, what did I do? You know, what's this involved? You think back in your mind instantly, what could have it been? Okay, so we go in. We were going to go to the restaurant, actually. So we go inside. We sit down in the waiting area of this restaurant. We're talking I think it was like 4 to 6 hour meeting where he unveiled for me what I had done to him to create such anger inside of him. And during the time, of course, I'm feeling terrible, you know. He's crying, I'm crying, his nose starts bleeding, there's blood all over him, you know, and he's trying to explain this to me, use his handkerchief. I'm trying to help stop the blood, you know, and it was just a mess. But we were getting it out. He was getting it out. And it was all about something that the two of us had as a common desire someday to confront a mutual enemy we had. See, I was already angry at this other person. Very angry. I stayed angry for 6 years, which is a big problem, but I didn't know it at the time. He was angry for 9 years at me. The person that I'm angry about is the same person that he and I decided as a buddy pack that we were going to confront this person and try to help that person change so I could get over my anger. So we have a common enemy. So what do? I finally get into our enemy's camp, and my enemy says, I don't like your friend. I can help, you can help me, but not your friend. So I go to my friend, and this was my enemy, and I'm with my enemy, and I go to my good friend and say, he doesn't want you. Sorry, you know, and so we'll see you later. And my good friend walked away from that situation saying, how could he have done this to me? We were going together to do this together. This was our thing. And he just discarded me like I'm not of any value to him. I didn't understand that until that day. But when I heard his feelings and when I heard his emotions coming out, when I heard how this had affected him for 9 years, I was grieving inside. I went, oh my gosh, I can't believe that I literally gave more loyalty to our enemy than I gave to my good friend. How could I have done that? We cried together, hugged together, sought each other's forgiveness. It was a start of a brand new, deeper relationship with the two of us. But with my situation, I was angry for 6 years. He was angry for 9 years. Both of us experienced the consequences of allowing too much anger to settle in. So that's what this session is about. The high cost of letting your anger from the time you're a little kid to any age you are, settling in and taking root inside of us without us getting out. See, it's okay to get angry. It's okay for Greg to have fallen down, and been angry at Dad for a while, maybe even a couple of days. But we got to get it out. And there's reasons why we have to get it out. I want to explain what anger is and what it does. And first of all, anger is a secondary emotion. It's not the primary emotion. Anger comes from fear, frustration, and hurt. So if you're involved in things where you feel hurt, it's going to result and reflect itself in anger. With my friend, he was hurt. With me, I was really frustrated. But it resulted in the same type of thing, anger. Or if you're fearful, those emotions can cause us to get angry. And what anger really is, in fact, the actual definition of the word forgiveness, which is just the opposite of anger, is knotting up inside. When we start getting angry and we stay angry for a long period of time, what we're actually doing is knotting up inside. And as we knot up, and they can grow over the years, and the knots can grow, get bigger, bundle up. And what happens is the deal that I like, and I call this the anger can. What these knots actually do is they dissolve into a can inside of us. If we let it go deep inside. And then we start developing our own can. And people who are angry and who are pretty offensive and mean to us, you can rest assured that they have a certain size, whatever, big or small, anger can inside of them. What people who are really bugging you and I, people who are really mean to us, they're spraying us out of their own anger can. And they got their anger can by allowing those knots to settle inside and go inside their can. So they spray us. In fact, I could use a volunteer just to show you. Let's see, I'm an angry person, okay? Now, this person doesn't know that I'm an angry person. So what can I do? When I get involved with him in a relationship, then I can spray him, see? Is that... Okay? Now here's the key. You got to let some of this stay on you. Okay, how about it might slide off your head, but let's see if there it is. I'm sorry. Okay. Now he is angry. Okay. All right, good. That's great. Oh, wait, don't take that off yet. Okay, because it's still wet. All right, it's very important to have that on your head. It does come off of everything. I know that's a very expensive jacket, but it does come off. It says right in the can, under this thing here, it says it will. Okay, now here's the thing. Now, as an angry person, I can do things to him that are mean. That's right. I can do things to him. I better stand back here. I can do things to him that are mean. Where's that meanness coming from? Where is that behavior of mine coming from? From my own anger can. Now, he's got a choice. He can allow that stuff to stay on him. Now, see, anger stings. It's like an acid. It burns. No one likes it. He doesn't like to be sprayed by my anger can because it's painful, right? It is. It's no fun, okay. Now, but what happens? He has a choice. He can either let that stay for a while until it dries, and then he can remove it. Of course, I could, if I was a loving person, I could see it on you and realize that it's offensive and burning, and I could seek forgiveness for it. But most of the time, these people won't seek your forgiveness because their anger can is too big, and they can't even see what they're doing. So he's got a choice. He can either let it dry and then remove it immediately, and take this off just like this. I guess it's not all coming off like I thought. And we'll have a dry cleaning. I'll be happy to pay for that. He can let it dry, or get that one to know that's the one I'd love to have you keep on to. So he can let it dry, or he can let it stay there, and it sort of dissolves, and then it sinks inside, and it develops his own can. And so now, what do you have the potential to do? When you get your own can, okay? It actually worked too. That's great. Now, sadly, all of you now are going to have to let that dry, and you're going to have to take it off and not be angry with him over a long period of time. This is how silly we are as humans. We let somebody else's irresponsibility spray us, whoop, and then what do? We let it sink in and we allow our own can to start developing. It goes generation after generation and it's very damaging. And it causes so much trouble. Now, what anger is not, and forgiveness is not in this session, forgiveness is not forgetting about what somebody did to us. So I don't want people to resist the idea of forgiveness because they think, well, that means I have to forget. No, you won't forget, but we'll do something with that memory and you'll see it. It doesn't mean you're going to trust this person anymore. If he was around me, he's been sprayed several times, the acid stings, he comes around me, he's going to be cautious. He's going to say, hey, you spray me one more time, and I don't know what I'm going to do to you. Because we just don't trust those people. So I'm not saying that forgiveness means that you're going to trust these people. Forgiveness doesn't mean you're going to be reconciled. You're going to be this person's friend again. It doesn't necessarily mean that. You may not be. You might be. It would be great. With my friend, we became even closer friends. So we did get reconciled. But in your situation and in other situations, maybe that's never going to happen. But does that mean that we can't learn how to forgive? No, it doesn't. I don't care what their response is. We have a responsibility to learn how to forgive. And why is it important for us to learn how to forgive? If we don't do it, and you're a father, what you'll have a tendency to do is spray your kids. They'll grow up with that can, they'll spray their kids and their mates, and then they'll spray their friends. And it just goes on and on and on and on and on. And in our country today, I believe that we need to come together as citizens and say to ourselves, enough is enough. We have got to look at anger for what it really is and the damage it's doing and say, let's help each other get this anger out of our life. I agree with you. Because it just keeps going on. It'll just keep going on generation after generation. I have a good friend in it because I want to get into the consequences of what happens if we let it come in and start developing that anger can. I have a friend who used to live in Kansas. And this sort of illustrates anger. I love the story, what happened to him. He and his buddy, when they were in high school, made a little agreement together that the next time there was a warning about a tornado coming into their area, which came from time to time, that they were going to get in their car and chase it because they thought it would be a lot of fun. And I'm the kind of personality where that does appeal to me to some degree, okay? Unfortunately, it wouldn't to a lot of people, but it would me. Because when I picture a tornado, I picture that little, and it's just kind of moving around, and you could chase it on a road. And they decided to do that when they heard came over the weather that a tornado was headed in their direction. So they called one another and said, let's go. We got in the car. Together they took off towards it, okay? They're going towards the direction where they said the tornado was spotted. They're moving closer and closer. It's kind of a dark day, and they're thinking, where's this little funnel? Where's this funnel? They're looking at it. All of a sudden, they see things flying all around, and they realize they're just in front of it. It's not a little funnel. It's 1.5 miles wide, sweeping across Kansas, destroying everything in its path. And they realize it's heading right on them. They turn their car around in panic, and they head in a different direction, obviously, but they can't get out of its way because the roads are designed in such a way that they can't go through the fences. They stop the car. Things are starting to fly around, unbelievable noise. They run down, because they're familiar with the area, they run down the hill, they get into a culvert about 10 feet down underneath the road. They get into the middle of it, and he said to me that seemed like eternity, it was like 747 jet engines inside there just roaring, trains going through that culvert. He said it was the most unbelievable noise I could imagine. And when it was all over, we walked up on the road, we could see it heading off quite a ways away. There was nothing around. Our car was gone. Everything was flat. They headed out for a little bit of fun. Wouldn't it be fun to chase a little tornado, right? Right. What happened? It turned on them. It wiped out everything around them, and they almost lost their life. That's what unresolved anger is. 1.5 mile tornado, but the tornado is inside of us, swirling around, doing a lot of damage. Now, I'm only talking about the kind of anger that's deep and big. I'm not talking about your ordinary daily things we get irritated with one another. I'm talking about real resentment. I'm talking about the kind of inward pain where we grit our teeth and think about revenge for this person and resentment, and where we rehearse it, that type of emotion, where it's deep. And it may be all the way back to your childhood. Maybe you were abused. And so I'm talking about, and there are some people who can't bring that to the surface. So I'm talking about that deep kind. And I don't want people to leave this session thinking, wow, well, I'm never going to get angry at my mate again. You know, those things are normal. Those things are natural. Those things can be healthy because we are venting our emotion and we're letting somebody else know where our property line is. That's healthy stuff. This is not. This is big-time tornado thing. So I'd like to show you a few of the consequences of how damaging this tornado is within inside of us. Number one, prolonged anger that's been buried alive creates relational distance. Okay, now you know where this comes from? This comes from a person that's got all these knots inside because they've been offended by another human being. So they're now a little bit cautious, mistrusting, and fearful of relationships. So they automatically put their arms up to keep people away from them because the pain that they remember from the offense that they're still mad about keeps them at a distance from other people. Now, you know why this is so damaging? Because how many guys have I counseled or written books for or spoken to who get so fired up after a session that they say, I could go home and start loving my wife and kids differently. So they go home and their wife doesn't receive it. They block their husband's attempt to love them. Why? Because people who are distant with too much anger inside of them do not allow us to love them because it's too uncomfortable to get that close. Because they have a certain standard of how far they want you to be away according to how big their can is inside. I'll never forget this one husband that I was trying to, he was married about 20 years. And for the last 3 years of his marriage, I couldn't help him. He would write me, call me on the phone, he was in another state, and he'd say, I tried this, Gary, and it just doesn't work. She doesn't respond. Well, I used to get irritated when I'm talking about a dull person. You know, can't you get this? This is what I was thinking. So I would say it again, or I'd say something different. Well, try this then. And he kept trying this, and he'd write me letters, and he'd say, Gary, I really want to love my wife, but I can't seem to do it. So one day he calls me on the phone. He says, Gary, I really appreciate all your help, but I'm leaving my wife. I said, really? You know, I hate that kind of a call. You know, you think, failure. I said, why? He says, I woke up this morning and she was standing by the bed with a knife in her hand. I went, ooh. Maybe, that could motivate somebody. That's a reflection. But here's what I found out. He did leave her. And here's what I found out. She was extremely bitter towards her mother. And the one time that I was allowed to talk to her, she said, I hate my mother and I will never forgive her. What does that create? Distance. So guess what she does? They get a divorce. She goes to a counselor who's a specialist in getting anger out of people. The counselor helps her. She stops being angry towards her mother. She forgives her mother. Now she's friends with her former husband. She's remarried, but what's happened to the kids? I watched what happened to the kids and the pain those kids experienced through this whole turmoil. And both adults are still, to some degree, experiencing pain from that divorce. Why didn't she go when they were still married? Well, she didn't know. She hadn't connected that this type of thing produces tremendous distance with people. And you know what? You can feel it when you're with these kind of people. They wear it. You know, you can just tell, I can't get real close to this person. They're kind of angry at everything. And they're the kind of people that are angry at doctors, in general. They can be angry at lawyers, They can be angry at anybody. You've heard I'm sure they start these kind of stories. You heard the latest lawyer joke? Do you know what lawyers and sperm have in common? 1 in 10 million becomes a human. Now, I know there are lawyers here, and I know there are lawyers. I don't want you to clap on that because I'm not angry with lawyers, and they're super important and a vital part of my life. But these people that start these things, because I don't want any angry lawyers. Then they'll have to go through this whole process. Okay. But what happens is that these people are so negative. It's a sort of a general, spirit of negative reaction in general. What if something like this happened to you? You go to a restaurant. You go with your wife, let's say. Come to the end of the restaurant, there's a meal, and you get your bill. And let's say it's $10,000. Tommy, what would you do? You'd right. That's right. And we have to do the Heimlich move on you. Okay. Why? Because there's no way his bill could be $10,000. But then the waiter says, well, the reason that your bill is $10,000 is because we wanted you to pay for everybody who's eaten here today. Would that be okay with you? And Tommy would say, no, it's not okay with me. But do you realize that's what people do to one another when they hold too much anger inside? They make you pay the bill for the people in the past that have offended them. It's not, I don't deserve this kind of reaction. Well, because see, they're very, very sensitive. And therefore, you have to pay the bill. That's why it's important to get it out. That's why the next session on the simple ways of untying knots is so important. But this is not all. There's more. Here's another major tornado result of allowing too much anger to stay inside. And it's a big one. I mean, it's so big that I think it's one of the biggest ones in our country today. Unresolved anger, held too long, to where it forms resentment. The big anger can literally causes us to be spiritually demotivated and spiritually blind. I had to say that real slow. Gallup poll, for example, has discovered in our country that over 90% of Americans believe in God. But unfortunately, many of those Americans cannot experience God because they have too much anger. You can't know God when you're angry inside. It's impossible. You can't be aware of God kinds of things like love and things that are being sensitive to people and light that involves. We can't see it because anger darkens our heart. It's like a rheostat. It shuts off the light. So we can't see the things we're doing, and oftentimes we don't even allow certain things that are happening to us, we don't allow ourselves to see those things. When I was very angry at this particular person that was my enemy, I was spiritually demotivated. I didn't have any desire. I didn't want to be with other people that worship God. I never had an insight, I never had any of that stuff. I was losing so much interest, I was getting discouraged. It was affecting my health. I didn't know that anger was connected to this stuff until after I started getting it out, started learning how to forgive, and then I saw how much that was affecting me. It really does cause us to be blind. It causes, have you ever wondered why there's so much corruption in our country? Have you ever wondered why there's so much abuse and the whole area of crime growing? Check it out. What they're finding in research is these people that are committing these crimes and this corruption are way too angry. In fact, in prisons, you heard the illustration they had with Hallmark cards where they gave the prisoners in this real hardcore prison Mother's Day cards, and they just gobbled them up. They didn't have enough of them. And then Father's Day came around, and they said, let's do the same thing. So they brought all these Father's Day cards. Now, one prisoner picked up a card for Father's Day because they discovered that every one of these prisoners hated their dad. Deep resentment. Number one cause of prostitution, too much anger towards dad. Look at the anger in our country, the corruption. Look at how much corruption is even in some certain segments of our government. I mean, it's unbelievable. Where's that coming from? Many of those people have unresolved anger, and they're not even aware of it. In fact, did you hear about the two prisoners who were talking one day? And the one prisoner said to the other one, you know what? He said, the food was a lot better in here when you used to be the governor. I mean, is that not common today? I mean, all these things that we see in business and all the rest of the corruption. See, what it does is it blinds us to this type of thing. It's like a good friend of mine, Dr. Gary Oliver, was counseling a couple who they were going to be divorced. The divorce was final in a week. And they came to him to say, is there anything you can do, last minute thing that could save this marriage? He said, I'm not a miracle worker. And they said, well, we'd be willing to try. So he met with them, and he's got alone with the husband. He said, I'd like to have you try something. I'd like to have you praise your wife 3 times very specifically and write them down what you'd said for the next 7 days, and then we'll get back together and see what happened. So they got back together 7 days later, and he was talking to them and saying, is anything that much different? She said, not that much different, and he said, well, what was different? What did you do? And the husband said, well, I praised my wife 21 times this week. And she went, what? No, you didn't. He said, I did. I wrote them all down. You did? And then Gary said, why don't you read those to us? He read every one of them, all 21 of them. She never heard one of them any time during the week. She actually reached over for the first time in months and touched him, just being moved by that experience. But she never heard it. Why is that? Because people who have too much anger stored inside of them, what they tend to do with positive things that happen to them, they tend to neutralize them. They don't even see it happening. Try loving a person in your home that's really, really angry. They don't respond. They take the neutral things that happen to them and turn them into negative things. So you're kind of walking around like, on landmine type of thing. And then what they take is the negative things and turn them into catastrophes. You think, wow, I can't believe you reacted like that. It wasn't that big of a deal. Yes, it is. It is that big of a deal to a person that has a big anger can inside of them. You can't relate to that person in a healthy way like you would want to when there's too much anger. Because they miss stuff. They miss the positive stuff. They miss the negative stuff that they do. Did you hear about the rich Texan who was having this big barbecue, and he wanted to do something really unique. And he decided to offer any guest $1 million right on the spot, single guest, that is, if they'd swim across his swimming pool up to him during the party, or he was going to give, because he had permission from his daughter, one date with his daughter that could develop into marriage, so he'd be marrying into a wealthy family. And he said, I'll offer it to anyone. Now, the only hitch is that he put 2 alligators in his swimming pool. And he knew no one would do it. All of a sudden, splash. And he sees this young man in his 20s just booking across the pool. Here are the alligators after him. He jumps out of the pool instantly. The alligators are right on his tail. Just got out. He's like this. And the guy comes over and says, I can't believe you did this. He said, what do you want, the $1 million? He says, no. He says, you want a date with my daughter? He says, no. He says, what do you want? He says, I want the guy who pushed me in. Now, okay? Now, he misses the $1 million. He misses the date. Why? Because, see, people who are too angry miss stuff. They focus in on who did this to me, and they become single-minded, and it causes us to suffer in all of our relationships. Okay, that's another major tornado floating around inside of us. Okay, now another one. Gosh, all these things are so devastating to us. Deep, unresolved anger lowers our sense of self-value. If you keep anger inside, if you have too many knots, and this thing is way too big, then what happens is that your own sense of value goes down, because you conclude naturally that I can't be worth much if people treat me like this. I can't be. And as the pain gets deeper and deeper, then we're more tempted towards addictive behavior. Because the pain is there, we've got to do something about this pain. We can't do it with a relationship because we're blocked. We're distant, we're blind, so we go to addictions. And as I mentioned, when you're with these kind of people that have low self-worth, it's like walking around landmines, right? When you're in your home, because you say the wrong thing, and I'm telling you, they will explode. Ooh, I didn't know that was going to cause that. And then the next day, oh gosh, okay? It's like the woman who said, she had very nervous about her husband's reaction. So she comes home one day and she says, honey, she says, I think we have a problem with the car. She says, I think there's water in the carburetor. And he says, what? That's impossible. She says, no, honey, I'm sure there's water in the carburetor. He says, honey, it's ridiculous. You don't even know what a carburetor is. He says, where's the car? She says, it's in the swimming pool. Now, see, she was edging up to that because, of course, there's going to be an explosion if there's too much anger and something like that. I mean, how many times did that happen with me in my marriage? I would explode. Where is it coming from? A lot of it that my father sprayed me often. I think really in reality he sprayed my brothers and sisters more than he did me because I was the last one. But there was a lot of this going on in my home. And therefore I had my own can and I sprayed my family adequately just like my dad did, which was not helpful. Very hurtful, very painful. Is that not true? Remember our meeting one time and you were just a high schooler? And I can remember him saying, Dad, in fact, my daughter brought it out. Dad, you are so critical of Michael about little things, you know, that she said, you're really going to hurt him. So I went to him and I said, hey, is that true? Am I really? He said, Dad, yes. I said, have you had enough criticism? He said, Dad, I've had enough criticism for a lifetime. I went, ooh. And so what kind of relationship did we have? I said, I want to make a decision that I don't continue. Where's a lot of this stuff coming from? My own anger at the time. And as it gets out, as this thing dwindles down to almost nothing, as these knots start getting untied, then it's not as prevalent in my life. Everybody benefits. Okay, so it's low sense of self-value, holding too much anger. Oh, gosh, this next one. Holding too much anger. Listen to the devastation of this. Too much anger is a leading factor, if not the leader, in causing children who come from divorced homes to divorce when they become adult and marry. I need to say that one more time. If you came from a home where there was a divorce that took place, especially during your 9 years of age up to like 18 or 19, there's a greater potential of you divorcing as an adult. It's like a meeting I had with Dr. Howard Markman years ago. It was like a 4-hour meeting. He's one of the leading experts in our world, in fact, on the effects of divorce on children and adults and how much damage it does. He said from his research, he has discovered that the leading cause that leads to eventual divorce for them in the future is that the children were never able to access their anger, bring it to the surface, and solve it. They kept it bottled up inside. In fact, if you've ever said this kind of thing, I want this to have an effect on us like, whoa, I don't want this inside of me. But if you ever said something like this or heard someone say it, I will never be like my dad, or I will never be like my mom, or I will never be like that boss, right? You know what? Wow. As soon as you say that phrase, listen to it reverberate around the room because it's a very serious phrase and it reveals a very serious problem. If you say you will never be like that person, guess what? Guess why that person has offended you? Guess why you're mad at that person? Guess why you don't like being around that person? Guess why you don't want to be like that person? Because that person has an anger can, usually. Guess what you have? An anger can. You know why you're going to be just like them? Because your can's going to look just like theirs. It's going to spray people. And other people eventually are going to say to you, I'm never going to be like that person. And it's going to go generation after generation. Somebody's got to stop it. Somebody's got to do the forgiving. Somebody's got to stop the size of the development of that can. Because you see, when we get anger inside, we don't bury it dead, we bury it alive. It lives inside like a tornado, eating us up inside. Well, in fact, that's the definition of depression. Buried anger, turning it inward. That's what leads us to be so unhappy as an adult. And we wonder, see, so many of us go to the doctor and say, I got this backache, or I got this neck ache, or I've got this headache, or I've got this problem here with my leg. Or, you know what doctors are telling us? A lot of these problems are physical because of our anger. That's how it's coming out. And we're all treating the symptom. What about this one? How many more millions of dollars are we going to pour of our tax dollar into the results of anger instead of finally getting some system going in our country where we attack the cause of all these negative consequences instead of pouring our money into the consequences? We're wasting our money. Unless we get anger out of the hearts of young people and adults, we're going to continue to see this crime and these other problems. Depression, you name it. Well, boy, I mean, literally, even before we continue, how many of you would agree with me at this stage? It's not a good idea to let big anger stay inside of us for 2 or 3 years, okay? Yeah, I want to try to create an atmosphere here of woohoo. I want to run towards forgiveness because I know there's going to be literally millions of people that are going to hear, get anger out. Guess what else it does? It allows the abuser or the offender to continue abusing you if we don't forgive. You know what you're doing? You're playing a little film in your brain, a little videotape, and you go over the offense. Oh, he did this to me, or she did that. Ooh, ooh. And we play it day after day after day after day. It's a little movie running. Do you want this guy to continue to offend you day after day after day? If you don't forgive them eventually, you'll just keep playing it. They actually control us when we play that little film over and over and over and over again. It's a major problem. Last but not least, it freezes our maturity level, our emotional level at the state that we get angry and stay angry. Let's say you were 12. You got really blasted by something. Freezes your maturity level at that age. You stop growing in certain areas of your emotional maturity at that age. So you have adult skin now. You look like a big person, but you can have a little tiny kid's heart emotionally. You could be married to a person like that and wonder, why are they so childish? Why are they saying these off-the-wall things? Why are they saying these offensive things that even some little kids wouldn't say? It's like the man, the husband, who said to his 6-year-old son, hey, son, get that quarter out of your mouth. You know how many germs on that thing? And his wife said, oh, Jimmy, that's okay. Leave it in your mouth. Even germs can't live on what your father earns. Now, see, offensive. Where does that stuff come from? Little cutting things that we say to one another. Check the size of our can inside. That comes out of that. Major problem. Well, gosh, we could go on and on and on. This is probably 10 sessions, the damage that anger does. So what do we want to do about this? Number one, this is concluding. Don't let it stay inside. Run to understanding what it means to forgive people so you can get that stuff out of your life. Otherwise, you're going to move into darkness. You're going to separate from other people to some degree. You're going to be childlike in ways you don't want to be. You're going to hurt. You're going to be potential depressed. Loss of energy. Wow. Is that where we want to live? Nah. That's why the next session gives us very specific steps. Every one of the steps in the next session actually helps us untie one knot at a time, or some of the sessions, some of the points I'll mention to you, are several knots at one time. For you, it may be different than it was for me, but I'm telling you the potential is there for you to have all the anger out of you, if you want it out of you. My friend that I had offended, and he was angry with me for 9 years, that day, the two of us were able to drain anger out of each other. I just listened to him. I empathized with him. I felt with him. I cried with him. I didn't want him to feel this way. I sought his forgiveness. I said, will you ever be able to forgive me? He said, yeah, I'll forgive you, but it's just so important to say it, and to get it out. That's so important. Part of the process you'll hear in the next session on forgiving. But the great thing about this is that we are better friends today than we've ever been. And the kind of friendship that we can be apart, we live in different cities. We can be apart for months. And when we get together, we're just like brothers. Close as can be. Why? There's no distance. There's no anger. That's what I would love to see for you, for your mate, for your kids, for your grandkids, for your fellow workers, the people you worship with. Oh, when I think about how many people in churches today are angry, trying to worship God and are frustrated because they can't, and have no idea that it's connected to their anger. When that starts getting out of our country and getting out of our churches and getting out of our homes, ladies and gentlemen, we are going to see a new nation, which I'm excited about seeing. So that's the next section. That's the next session. A few steps that I have found are very effective in draining your anger out so that you can really, in a practical way, forgive people so the pain inside of you can start subsiding and you're freer, released to be able to love people the way you really dream. So I can hardly wait to get to that next session. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Appreciate that. Thank you. Are you as amazed as I am about how much damage anger that's buried alive inside of us can do? I mean, isn't it? In fact, look what it does. Destroys relationships. #1 cause of divorce. None of us want that. Weakens our health. That's exactly what the next session is about. I'm going to give you some very specific steps that can help you untie the knots of all that anger inside of us. You can be as free as you want. You hold the key. These steps will untie your knots, little by little. I can hardly wait for you to receive these.